Welcome to Bold Talk series where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Arjun Dev Arora, managing partner at Formula One. Arjun, great seeing you. Welcome to our
Yeah,
Bold Talk series. How are you, man?
good, doing very well. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time.
It has.
I remember the first time we met. This is like in New York City. It's like over 15 years ago, doing one of those ad tech.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, been a long journey since then, but had a lot of fun. Yeah.
we do a lot of great events, great
Yeah.
parties too.
hmm
Um, Arjun, awesome seeing you, and looking forward to this a short format conversation. First thing first, how did your personal journey led you from electrical engineering and computer science to investment banking, entrepreneurship, venture capital, and ultimately
Yeah.
founding Formula One? It's like give us
Yeah.
that your journey.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I grew up down in Southern California, and I went to school at UC Berkeley, like you mentioned. So studied electrical engineering and computer science at Cal. Challenging program, met a ton of amazing people there, and learned a lot. And more than anything, kind of learned how to think, which I really appreciate. From that program in particular. But from there, as they say, birds of a feather flock together, and a lot of my friends were going into investment banking, and so I ended up kind of looking at that as a career option. That's something I hadn't necessarily considered given I was doing electrical engineering and computer science, but found a role doing investment banking in and around the tech sector. So worked specifically on semiconductors and did a little bit of internet and software as well. So helped take a company called Mellanox public, which was then later acquired by NVIDIA, and also involved with some cross-border transactions as well. So it was a great time to be kind of there and in the mix with a whole bunch of M&A and IPO work in kind of the, let's call it what folks would now call the deep tech space. From there, spent a couple years at Yahoo, ended up running business development for Yahoo Real Estate, and that's where I cut my teeth on the internet. Learned about advertising, learned about how the web works, how traffic works, how affiliate links and all that good stuff. So it was a great opportunity to get educated on that, and we built at the time was the largest online real estate business in the United States, and Zillow and Trulia were just getting started. So it was a fun place to learn a lot and met some incredible people who I still stayed in touch with today, many of whom, funny enough, are also in the venture world. But from there, started my first company called Retargeter in the online advertising space that grew relatively quickly. We had customers all over the world, like you mentioned. We work with some of the big ad agencies in New York, and I was out there all the time, going to a lot of fun ad tech parties. But we also worked with companies like Uber and Twilio and Zendesk, so companies that were right here in San Francisco, just getting started around that time, and we got to grow with them, which was a lot of fun. So providing retargeting and other real time bidded technology services to those folks. From there, I started doing a little bit of investing and advising, got close to the 500 startups folks, where I was an LP in Fund One. And that ultimately, post all that kind of operating experience, led me to 500, where I came initially as an EIR, but found my way to being a partner relatively quickly, and then got tasked with leading our efforts globally for fundraising and investor relations as well. So put me in front of a lot of really interesting rooms all over the world, meeting with LPs, in addition to kind of continuing to invest and find amazing founders at the pre-seed and seed stage. So, and then from that, spent a little bit of time at Expo with Garrett Camp, the founder of Uber, and his entity, in kind of an in-residence program, and started to just get a lot of inbound interest for supporting founders and fund managers and LPs and kind of the broader ecosystem to be helpful. And that's kind of what codified the Format One entity, which is what I've been up to now for the last few years. So it's been a fun and wild journey across the startup ecosystem, but it's a place that I love, and I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I mean, just listening to you, like all these great experiences, make me think, like, my God, this is you've done incredible, amazing stuff over the years, and
Oh, thank you.
you're
Yeah.
still like at your young age, you're still like ready to go, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. More to
So
do.
for everyone who's hearing out there, like just get out there and get things done, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. As kids these days are saying, it's all about high agency, right? So yeah, you can just do things, as they say. Yeah.
So, letting you to found Format One.
Mhm.
What's the focus now with the Formula One?
Yeah. So I spend, a good chunk of my time, probably 40% of my time with founders. So supporting typically, Series Seed through Series C, founders and CEOs in kind of a consigliere, chief advisor, executive coach role. So really get to help those founders as they go through all their challenges of being a founder. So it can be anything from fundraising, co-founder conflict, go-to-market strategy, product strategy, hiring, just extending the network and finding, folks for various go-to-market hypotheses, PR, positioning, just anything that the CEO needs, kind of being there as a consigliere, and then of course helping them through their own leadership journey as well, and how to be a better leader, a better communicator, and a better, visionary and an operator. So that's been a lot of fun on that side. And then there's another bucket, which is kind of doing something similar, but for fund managers. And there typically is a fund, 2.5 or fund three, folks who've got their venture fund started, but are now getting ready to kind of institutionalize the entity on average, but also work with some funds that have been around for a very long time, and a couple of funds that are just getting started. So that's kind of the work on the fund side, and those first two are compensated. And then lastly, I spend a decent amount of time with the LP universe still, and kind of maintain those relationships, and spend time with them, just helping to educate folks on how the venture asset class is changing, what's happening, who's doing interesting things, what are some of the interesting emerging platforms that are coming up. So just being a thought partner to some of those LPs as well. So that's kind of the mix of time that I'm
Yeah.
spending these days. Yeah.
So Arjun, you've been around for a long time. You've seen like the waves in the .com era, and you
Hmm.
see now. What's
Yeah.
different now than what it was
Yeah.
back?
I think just sheer acceleration. I think one is that there's more people who are cognizant and aware of innovation and technology, and there's general excitement, in the broader space around it. And things are starting faster. Things are starting earlier. I was at the YC demo day yesterday, and there's a bunch. I think Gary was saying something like there's more 18 to 22-year-olds now than kind of have ever been there before, and the speed to growth, the speed to build, to pivot, all of those things are changing, dramatically. So I think AI, of course, is having a big role in this, in addition to just, we are all standing, on the shoulders of giants after now multiple generations in Silicon Valley, and that just continues to allow for further acceleration of product and go to market. I mean, more companies are going from 0 to 100 million in revenue in a shorter time period than we've ever seen before. So it's accelerating and it's exciting. So I think, and it's driven by many factors, AI
Yeah,
being, of course, one of them, but not the only one.
yeah, and accelerating and doing all those revenues with a lot less people than
Hmm.
way before.
Yeah.
Um, are we heading to like companies like a unicorns with like a 4 or 5 people?
Yeah, I think the meme that's been floating around is we're going to see a one person unicorn here shortly, and I think that may be a little bit far fetched. I still think that organizations are required to support customers and scale, and as things grow, there is just additional complexity, and so at this point in time, I don't think we're in a position to see that happen. But I've been continued to be impressed by teams that are doing so much with so few people, and they kind of have an army of agents and 1099 contractors and other folks, and they're able to manage them in a thoughtful way using technology. So I think we're still a few years out from that, but we're
It's
getting to
going,
a place where
going
it's
that way,
coming.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's going that way for sure.
So you work with a lot of founders. Many founders struggle with board leadership, operation
Hmm.
discipline,
Yeah.
accountability as their companies scale. How do you help these founders navigate these less discussed but critical parts of the company building?
Totally. No, this is actually, I think, some of the most important aspects of company building, and I think they should be discussed more often. So I appreciate you asking. I think ultimately it's knowing thyself as a founder and trying to figure out who you are and what your motivations are and what drives you, and understanding where you have your strengths and where you have your opportunities where you can slot people in to support those areas. So a lot of the exercises first, kind of getting to know yourself and um, your various areas of competence, and then working on the areas that are absolutely critical. So communication is something that if you're a CEO, it doesn't matter, um, you know what you're doing. You just have to be great at that, and so that's something that I think is a learnable skill. On the accountability side, I think some founders tend to be more product oriented or more GTM oriented, and that's where I think understanding where they might have the skill set to be to create that kind of accountability mechanism in place. If they have that skill set, are comfortable doing it, great, they should do it. But in many cases, they find a great COO or an operations team, or find VPs of engineering or sales that can create structure in those organizations so that there is that kind of accountability, and ideally accountability that is public facing, clear, transparent to the organization. And so I think those things are important to institute over time, and they're learnable too. So I think a lot of folks have learned those skills over time. And we've seen great CEOs who came up right out of college and who've kind of figured those skills out over time. But it requires a will to do so, and a coachability and an awareness of its importance. And if those things are in place, then it's absolutely something people can learn.
Yeah, very well said. Uh, Arjun, I'm enjoying this conversation, man.
No, thanks.
um,
Thanks for the thoughtful
this is
questions. Yeah.
this is a short format conversation. Bold talks. Certainly, we'll have another one, a longer version.
Mm-hmm.
But a few more questions before we end this.
Yeah.
As someone who's invested personally and through funds into companies
Mm-hmm.
like Lyft and Notion and Flexport,
Yeah.
what are some key traits you look for when deciding whether to back a founder or a company?
Yeah. So I think at the pre-seed stage or very early, a lot of it is that founder bet, right? So it's really understanding, is that founder incredibly gritty, resilient, intelligent, able to communicate, has shown a pattern of working through incredibly difficult situations and coming out the other side, having been successful. So that is a little bit more art than science, so to speak. And I think as companies progress, or they're later in their journeys, Flexport and Notion I invested in quite late through SPVs, but still relatively early. But there was some data, there was some market analysis there. There was an understanding of the TAM and the opportunity, and there was clarity on kind of the traction that existed as well. So I think the TAM question is still such a critical one. Is like, how big is this market truly? And if it is absolutely massive, and someone is solving a critical problem for that for that market, and it's clear that there are signals that that is the case, then I think that becomes easier to invest later stage. Now there's still a ton of diligence and other things you need to do. Not saying that it's easy to invest at any stage, but I think it becomes a little bit more of a science versus at the earliest stages, kind of pre-seed inception stage. You're really looking to understand the founder, the team, the market they're playing in, their ability to pivot quickly and adjust, and just their kind of relentlessness in their eyes is what you're looking for.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Be relentless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is something that the if that is not in DNA of an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
I think that alone is that you really have to work that out.
Mm-hmm.
Arjun, is there a book that you have read
Mm-hmm.
or you recommend that help you guide your decision making or shape your approach to business? And if
Yeah.
that is one, we'll love you can share
No,
it.
thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a few. So I think on the first principles of just, human engagement and interaction, I think a lot about, business is ultimately people and individuals communicating and sharing ideas and products. So, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a great book just as a foundational element of understanding, how one engages with oneself and with others. And so I think that's a really important, first principle sort of book. And then, I think there's other, great books, whether it's from, Ben Horowitz or Peter Thiel, Zero to One, or The Hard Thing About Hard Things was the first one. These are just great books that help showcase the reality of what it takes to build a startup, and walk through some of these stories around, the reality of what it takes. And that's just helpful, I think, to understand at a deep level. And of course, they pull out kind of meta trends and themes, in those books. So those are a couple others that that I
Nice.
think a lot about. Yeah,
Yeah, really good books, and truly, you can always go back and read them again and still
yeah,
relevant today.
yes, yeah, totally.
Uh, Arjun, what does the
Hmm.
word bold mean to you?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's the ability to kind of beat to your own drum, be clear about what your vision is and what you see in the world, and then actively take action against that. So the ability to kind of stand alone or with others, but with clarity in your own kind of perspective, that's built upon your own experiences, your own knowledge, and then actually taking action with that. So it's not limited to just the boldness in and of itself, but it requires movement. It requires forward movement and action. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, always taking massive actions. That's what it takes to
Mm-hmm.
get on the other side. Um,
Yeah.
Arjun, thank you for joining me. It was so great to see you. I'm glad I reached out. I
No.
learned so much, and looking forward to seeing you hopefully soon in Bay Area or somewhere in the world. Until that
Yeah.
time, take care, be great, and be bold always.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My friend, cheers.